Hello again and welcome back to Harry's Jeti videos. This one we're going to look at Jeti and the Xicoy telemetry adapter, which brings you telemetry straight from the jet engine ECU that uses a Xicoy ECU with the newer style servo plug for connecting your ground data terminal. If you've got the older style with like a little telephone jack, I don't know, maybe they make one for that. But this is for the newer one. And lots of different brands of engine use the Xicoy ECU. In this case, it's a Wren engine using an up-to-date Xicoy. And my lovely assistant today for this film is my venerable old F86 Sabre, built from the Trim Australia kit, sadly no longer available. What a fantastic model. It was my first ever jet model, and as at the time of making this video, it's 16 years old and still flying, and flying very nicely. It's had a repaint, which is why it looks rather fresh, but mechanically, what a fantastic model. Okay, the Xicoy telemetry adapter. Not only can it bring you data values, which you can use in alarms and display on screen. For instance, it's showing from the Xicoy adapter 7.5 volts. It can also emulate your ground data terminal. And when I say emulate it, I don't just mean look like it. I mean really, you can then use the programming buttons here as you would the buttons on your ground data terminal and actually change the values in the ECU itself. However, it's a bit of a slowish, clunky way to do it because you're relying on back and forwards between the transmitter's Jeti box emulator and the ECU, but it can be done. But the good thing is, if you want, you can bring up an exact replica of the ground data terminal's display on your transmitter screen for things like startup. Great for watching that. Basically what you do is you buy this little piece of electronics, and it is quite small and quite cheap, from Xicoy, and plug it into where you'd plug the ground data terminal, and the other end of the plug plugs into your receiver, provides the telemetry data, and off you go. I don't know whether it would work on a Y lead, so you could plug the ground data terminal in as well. That's something you'd have to investigate. I don't bother, bring it up on screen. So let's dive in.
Alarm.
Yes, thank you dear, and have a look. We go into timers, sensors, into sensors and logging setup, and lo and behold, it turns up. And there's all the stuff you can log as usual. You would set here yes or no as to whether you actually want it recorded on the SD card. If you say no, it doesn't have any effect on being able to display it and set alarms. It's purely do you want it recorded as you go along. So you can get your exhaust gas temperature, the RPM, battery voltage, the pump voltage, the percent throttle you were at, the fuel percentage that was used. I think you have to set up something in the ECU itself to do a fuel percentage, like tell it what the maximum is, and then based on the pump milliamp hours, it probably has a gamble at how much you've actually used. Okay, so it's seen that. You can then use it to set alarms. For example, add an alarm, sensor, telemetry. You could set an alarm on the turbine temperature, turbine battery voltage. Let's pick that one, have a look. Enabled condition, yes, if the battery voltage gets less than or equal to, let's say, 7 volts. And give it a file. I've probably got a low turbine battery. There, turbine battery low, WAV.
Warning. Turbine battery low. Warning. Turbine battery low.
I suspect I made that one at the rc-thoughts.com website, so we'll say OK to that. And since it's I've got a battery on it that's in sort of storage mode. It's about 7.5 volts. So if we were to turn that up, we should.
Warning. Turbine battery low.
There we
Warning.
go.
Turbine battery low.
Okay, so you can set yourself some nice little alarms. Okay, what else can you do? Well, you can display it. For instance, I've got turbine battery voltage, as we saw a moment ago, displayed on the front screen. And so you can set up any individual items there. Right, now for the biggie. How do you get the emulation of the ground data terminal up on the screen? Well, this is not an X-bus device, it's an EX device, which means that you won't find it in Device Explorer. You have to look for it and do all its settings in Jeti box, which is not the greatest of things. However, as you can see, one of my displayed telemetry items is Jeti box 1. You can actually have 2 Jeti box emulators running. Now, it's very simple to do it. You would just say add, I think it's in system, come down, and there it is, Jeti box. So you just add Jeti box as one of your displayed items. Yep, nice and easy. So there we go, and for me it's on page 2. Let's go and have a look. So here's display telemetry, page 1. There's that turbine battery voltage as displayed telemetry. Let's go to page 2. And there is Jeti box 1. The snag is, it's always going to default to this every time you switch on. You're going to have to manually change it over to showing the ground data terminal view. How do we do that? Okay, go into menus, come down to applications. Remember, you've got to do this every time you switch the model on and want to run, so it's a bit of a nuisance. You go into Jeti box. We don't want the transmitter, we want to go to the right in the sort of columns of menus. The next one is RX and the next one is MX, which is the various sensors. So now we want to come down into our various telemetry sensors. I don't want the M bar, and this sequence now may be a little bit different for you depending on how many sensors you have that are EX sensors and therefore showing up in Jeti box. I've got 3 in this model: the MGPS, which is still sadly an EX rather than X bus, the M bar, which at this point when I bought it was an X bus, and of course the Xicoy. So I'll have to go to the right, and it's showing me more sensors. Now it doesn't tell you a lot here. Sensor 1, Sensor 2, Sensor 1 with the curly brackets next to it is the one that would be selected if we do anything, and I happen to know that that is the GPS, height 44, velocity 0 knots. So we need to come down here to which is the Xicoy adapter, and we press to the right and we'll go into it. Okay, there we go. We are now live in Jeti box emulator looking at the ECU, and I'll prove it. I've got 1 button trim for the throttle, so if I 1 trim up, it'll jump to the trim screen, but trim low. Oh, no, it doesn't because we're in Jeti box. It will when we're back in display telemetry. They're ready. Okay, so I can bring it back to trim low. So now, with Jeti box showing the screen from the ground data terminal, we just leave it. And that has selected what's going to show here on our front screen. Yeah, page 1, page 2. Remember a moment ago it was showing that TX RF number. Now it's showing a live ground data terminal. Again, I'll bring the trim up. Sadly, the trim screen will jump in the way for a few seconds, but you'll see it go from trim low to ready. And therefore, if we were to run the engine now, we'd get live all the data just as you would see it on your ground data terminal. Temperature rising, RPM rising, pump value rising. Okie doke. And that is the Xicoy telemetry adapter.